Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Modern Pilgrim podcast. I'm Mark Bowman.
I'm Garrett Ball.
And today we have a special guest with us, Wesley Hodges, owner and operator of Wesley Hodges Fly Fishing and Bird Hunting. And I think you guys are going to really enjoy this podcast of ours today. Wes is not only a good friend of mine and Garrett's, but Wes is one of the best in the business, and probably one of the best fly fishermen I've ever fished with. One of the best, all around fishermen I've ever fished with, and he has a great business, and we're just very, very happy to have him here this evening.
And he's very fluent in Spanish.
Very fluent in Spanish, I might add. And we'll get to that in a little while. We just learned that this morning by chance. So we're at Little Sink Creek Farm, Bristol, Tennessee.
Nice, cozy place.
We're
right here, Mark.
We are, and we're sitting here by the fire. We have Dylan Holly is helping us with our podcast, and we're so blessed to have him because we're new at this. Wes, of course, is very experienced in the podcast world because he is a world-renowned fly fisherman and outfitter, and he's done quite a few podcasts, and people love listening to him. Garrett and I are just starting out as the Modern Pilgrim podcast, and like I say, we're just very happy.
Some of us are modern, some of us are more pilgrim.
That's true. But thank you guys for being with us, and we're sitting here by the fire on a cool night in Northeast Tennessee, and we're happy to introduce Mr. Wes Hodges.
Thanks, guys, for having me here. Yeah, as Mark kind of said, I own Wesley Hodges Fly Fishing and Bird Hunting.
Where are you out of, Wes?
Well, we're out of basically Western Virginia, almost due west of Richmond. If you're familiar with Lexington, Virginia, about 20 minutes west of there on what is technically the headwaters of the James River, where the cow pasture and the Jackson merge and form the James River. We're basically right there on the bank. That's where the lodge is at, and pretty much the epicenter of the whole operation takes place there. But, I got guides kind of scattered around. We do the New River, the Jackson River for the trout fishing. And then we have, probably 7 different rivers we got on for smallmouth. Do a little bit of muskie fishing. We don't personally like catching muskie because the weather usually sucks.
You ever had a bad muskie fishing trip?
Probably one of the worst fishing trips, and the worst in the sense of the weather of my life with both of you two. Yeah. It was.
I thought it was a great time.
Yeah.
I won't say it was, but it was awesome. We left the cabin that morning, and it was 18 degrees, and it warmed up during the middle of the day to a balmy 21 degrees. And I will tell you, it was an experience. And like Garrett and I was saying, we're going to tell you all of our stories in this podcast, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent. But I'll tell you, it was an experience, and it was awesome for all of us. I mean, we weren't very successful muskie fishing that day.
But I tell you what we were successful at was finding that grassy knoll. We had that lunch on.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a trip of a lifetime. It was so cold that day we couldn't even cast anything. Everything froze up. Everything froze.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember.
But yeah, I've been running this business since 2013. I've been guiding since 2011, kind of by accident. I kind of fell into it and then started my own business also by accident for the most part in 2013 after I graduated from college. And from 2013 to today, it's been pretty wild ride. Still to this day, banks ask me for my business plan, and I still don't have one.
Well, just speaking of like a business plan, like whenever you went to college, what'd you go to college for?
Well, I went to Virginia Tech, Quite possibly one of the smartest men on the East Coast right now, because Virginia Tech only allows intelligent people and supreme males. So yeah, I went to Virginia Tech. I went to Virginia Tech to get away from a girl, oddly enough.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she didn't want any part of that school, and that's the school that accepted me, so I went there. True story. And
So is this a game of dodgeball you're talking about? Or?
yeah,
Pretty close.
yeah. But yeah, so went to Virginia Tech, and I studied international relations with a focus on the international economy, and then I double majored in Spanish, because I was deeply involved in some interview processes with the government, and I'm sure we'll get into that whole storyline. But that's why I went into that career field, or that specific study, was because I was on a path to work for the government, and that was going to get me in that door. Clearly that didn't work out, being a fishing guide, but that was by choice.
So like at that aspect, like what you went to, college for was something you was obviously passionate about.
Oh yeah.
Something you wanted to pursue. And then, so like what was your, change in plans of being a fishing guide?
That's probably a very good segue into getting into kind of my story and how I got to where I'm at, because when I was a child, a young kid, I was born and raised on a ranch in Texas, Northeast Texas. Pretty big ranch. In Texas, it's not a big ranch. It's actually a small farm, but for the rest of the world, it's a big piece of property. And of my family, I was really the only one that hunted and fished. I was consumed by nature and the allure and the mystique and magic of being outside and chasing snakes and hunting and fishing, and then realizing you could eat them. And it was all just magical to me, almost like a fairy tale. And I fell in love with it. And every day, I would hunt or fish something from the time I was probably 8 years old until the time I graduated high school and went into the military. Every day I would hide in guns and fishing poles on places so I could strategically fish and hunt on the way home from school or on the way to school or whatever. It was different, and I was in love with it. Still am in love with it, and it was very much who I was, and still am today. And I don't understand why yet I was the only one in my family to be drawn to that. I mean, it was heaven for outdoor recreation. This ranch was. I mean, we had huge lakes on it. We had endless fields and thousands of acres of trees to hunt on. But I was the only one that was really drawn to it. I don't know where that came from. My dad doesn't hunt or fish at all. My mom she was raised on a farm in Minnesota, and all she knows is to work. My brothers, they played sports, but they do dabble with guns and stuff like that, but it's nothing to the level that I am. They're very much intellectual, they're all Marines, they lack testosterone.
Boy, here we go.
Yeah.
This is where I wanted to get it.
Yeah.
So you have how many brothers, Wes? You've told
4 brothers.
Okay. So
Four
and
brothers.
they were all Marines.
Every one of them.
And so tell us what you were.
I was a alpha male. I was a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne Division. And I also was involved in snipers and reconnaissance. That's what I did for the vast majority of the time. I was just a standard paratrooper. Then I kind of moved up into reconnaissance. Then I got moved up into snipers, where I finished up my time. Just over 7 years.
Thank you for your time.
Oh, you bet.
Yes,
It was
definitely.
That was the best time of my life. Probably in everything I've done in my life, everything, going into the military was the best decision. I mean, not all in all, but like the most life-changing decision that I made was the military. It got me out of Texas and into a whole nother realm of the world. Not only in going to foreign countries and, the war and everything else, but also because it let me leave that small town. And as you guys know, when you're in a small town, it's rare that you leave that small town. You're there and you're a part of that earth. You're a part of that community, and you normally don't leave. And that the war, that got me to leave, and that opened up so many doors for me to go see and do so many different things. So everyone always says, the war is so bad. They sometimes they're apologetic about the war and how I went and fought and stuff like that. And I don't want to hear that. I volunteered for it, and it was that. There is so much beauty in discomfort if you're willing to find it. And that in itself was beautiful because it got me out of that area of Texas and opened my eyes to a whole nother level, a whole nother realm of possibilities of living a life in the United States of America. Yeah. I probably would have never known.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I have, such a high level of respect for our people who serve.
Yeah.
And, you and I met, I just for the first time in 2020 during the COVID shutdown of the whole damn world. But, our first fishing trip together, I think that, I learned real quick we shared the same values. We shared the same camaraderie. And we shared a passion for the outdoors. I remember that fishing trip to this day. I had some friends and customers of mine with me, and I will tell you this: you spend 8 hours with someone,
whether you like them or not.
Yeah, yes. We'll get into that later. But My partner, he still goes back. He's still mad at me over a guided fishing trip that I guided him on. So, but we just
what is it a fishing trip if you don't catch fish? No.
Yeah.
No.
It's a fishing trip. But we caught a shitload of fish that day.
We did.
Excuse my language, but we did, and I saw right off. And I wasn't, you were, I'd booked the trip with another person and you had brought your team in to fill in to do that. And from that point on, we fished together a lot.
Yeah.
And, because, you run a professional business. It's, it's second to none. I would say that, and I would tell everyone that, and I'm not just saying that because we're friends. Yeah. Every time that I have ever fished with you and your guides and your business, it's been a great experience, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate our friendship that we've grown into, and going back to. Your military service and everything. I appreciate that, and more than you'll ever know.
Yeah, and I thank you. Those are very kind words. The military thing. It's something that I needed, and I think that not to harp on who needs to go in the military or anything like that, but I needed it. Mainly because I needed some direction in life. I needed some discipline and some focal points on certain things. I'm a very creative person, outgoing. My whole life I look at things at a macro scale, but I need some focus to keep me kind of going in a certain direction. To really help me achieve a goal, because I might have 30 different things going on at one time. And I never accomplish any of them without focus.
You got to have that direction of drive.
Correct, exactly, and discipline, and standardization, and professionalism. In the military, I will easily say the military is what has allowed my business to become so successful. Is because, as Mark's saying, we're very professional and this, that, and the other. Well, that comes from focus. That comes from standardized stuff for my guides and my team, having things look a certain way, having guys act a certain way. I hold them accountable to being on time. I held them accountable to to their cleanliness of their equipment, the type of equipment they use. I mean, it's, a fishing trip is a fishing trip. That you're right. It's fun and it's great to go out and have that stuff, but you can have a much better experience if everything beforehand is done properly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you create a
The
professional
the
environment.
preparation,
Yes.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Behind the scenes, all the hard work and behind the scenes stuff
Mm-hmm.
that you have to do. And, like me from, my guiding experiences that I've had, like all the work that people don't see
Mm-hmm.
is what makes, even the most presentable fishing trip or hunting trip or whatever, like it just makes it more enjoyable for them.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And, and what those people see, like, with Mark, and even the first time that me and Mark went with you, like, it was just like, this ain't a joke.
Right.
Like, we're going fishing with somebody.
Yes.
Like whether we caught a fish or not, we knew we were in a professional environment, on a couple of boats of people that they didn't expect anything less but.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and there are guide services that run it the same way I do, and there's guide services that don't, and you can clearly tell a difference in the two.
100%.
Yep.
100%. And, we've talked about that. And so when you got out of the military, I guess, and you decided, how did you decide to start your business? And how did that happen?
Well, it started, it was an epic failure, to be honest with you. When I got out of the military, did the college route and did that stuff. And, I moved to Ecuador to study Spanish and become completely acclimated in the Spanish culture and become fluent, mainly because...
That explains what happens this morning.
Exactly, yeah.
That does explain it.
Yeah. But I went down there because it was for another purpose. I went down there because I was deep in some interviews with the government, for, a three-letter organization that I was trying to get involved in and, interviewing with. And that was part of the process, was I had to be completely fluent in this language and acclimated to the culture to become embedded in that area. And about 2 weeks before I was set to leave the country and go back and finalize everything and graduate and all this other stuff, I was honestly sitting at a little tiki bar on the beach early in the morning. I was drinking a shot of tequila and coffee and smoking a hand-rolled cigarette. And I was watching these young boys surfing at like sunrise. And, by the sidebar here, we surf for fun. Down there in South America, they surf for work. They're actually surfing on these long boards, 2 kids at a time. One is steering the surfboard. The other one's picking up shrimp pods as they're floating through the surf. Yeah.
Wow.
Most people don't know that. Leave it to a bunch of white boys to turn it into a professional sport.
I never thought.
Wow.
So I'm watching these young boys, these Ecuadorian boys, do this, and they're working. And they'll beach their surfboard, and they'll run the shrimp pods up to market, and they'll sell their shrimp, and they go back out there and do it again. Yeah, that's what surfing's all about. Yeah, it's work. So, and they would stack them up on these long boards. Yeah. So I'm watching these boys do this, and I'm just mesmerized by, like, how free these people are in their life. And they're not held to a clock. They're not held to anything. They're held to some labor, but they're having a fun time while they're working. And, it's freedom.
Yeah.
Far, far, far freer than what most Americans think freedom really is.
Yes.
When we think freedom, we think of, freedom from oppression, freedom of speech and stuff like that. But these people are free to live.
Right.
And that's what they do. And I was kind of like, man, I'm going to go back. I'm going to be in D.C., sitting behind a desk or flying to some foreign country and, working for somebody who doesn't even know who the hell I am, never met me in his life,
Yes.
Potentially, in harm's way for somebody that doesn't even care about me. And I was like, this is bullshit. Why am I going to do that? And I was like, I've given up my whole life for the government. I've stopped fishing and hunting. I haven't fished and hunted since I was 18. I'm going on 28 now. I'm like, it's my time now. I'm going to do what I want to do.
Put your life on the line.
Exactly.
I mean, I might add that, that is, there's a a huge difference.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, you were the hunted.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And it was, you know, it's, it kind of hit me weird, you know, when I actually took it all in. It's like, God, I'm going to go back again and give up everything, give up really who I am again for another job. And all I really used to do growing up was I fished and hunted every day. I remember telling my mom when I was probably 13, I wanted to be a hunting guide. And she's like, there's no such thing. Like they don't
like,
do that.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, like you're crazy.
Don't be silly.
Yeah, and I read about it in the Field and Stream magazine. I was like, no, Mom, this guy actually, he makes money, he takes people hunting, and teaches them how to do it. This is what I want to do. She says, you're crazy. No, don't do that. But I remembered all that stuff. Yeah. And
back when we could actually pick up a Field and Stream magazine, I might add, and read it.
Yeah.
You know, it went by the wayside, and we'll go down that, but I won't get around a hole here, but, you know, it's old school.
Yeah, it is old school, and it was. You know, I wish I could feel that kind of magazine again. By the way, it was good and good stories in those magazines. And so I remember on that at that tiki bar, little cantina, I made my mind up that I was done. I was pulling my packet. I was pulling out of the recruitment process, and I was gonna start fly fishing again, like hardcore, become a guide and start a business. And I landed back in DC, and then flew into Roanoke, drove down back to my little cabin I lived in at Virginia Tech. And I took all my money out of savings after I graduated, and I bought a drift boat. I'd already been guiding a little bit before then, but never like on my own.
Right.
And I started a business, and this was probably I was a winter graduate, so it was probably in like December, January timeframe. I started this business, and I went broke as shit by April.
Wow. so why do you think that happened? I mean, how did that happen? I mean, was it
it had to happen.
Yeah.
It had to happen.
Yeah, I mean, like almost like
that
if
makes
that didn't
sense.
happen, you wouldn't have.
Right.
You know, even now, you wouldn't have that ambition.
Nope. It had to happen. And it was at the time I thought it was the end of the world. Like, I'm an idiot. What kind of moron does this?
Should listen to my mom.
Exactly. Should listen to my mother. Like, what kind of idiot starts a fishing business in the middle of the winter and thinks they're going to make it? And secondly, who in the hell starts a fishing business? This is crazy. So,
or a guiding business.
or guiding, but yeah, like who does that?
Yeah.
You know? And I was pretty down on myself about it. I was broke. I mean, I was feeding my dog dead ducks that I was shooting. I'm not kidding. Cooper, yeah. He was a year-old duck dog I had, and I was feeding him like the mallard breasts that I'd go out and hunt ducks and shoot ducks and feed him the duck meat. That's
I would say he was pretty happy.
like, he loved it. He was like, don't work. Please don't work at all.
So now I see the whole connection. Because I got to spend some time with Cooper week before last, and he's a beautiful chocolate lab, and I see that connection now.
Yep.
And because I can see with him how much you love him and how much he loves you, so that ties that in.
Yep. And we did, and so for about it's probably, I think it was about April, I got a job offer from the Target Corporation to do basically become a management on the executive team for their distribution center. And I took the job. It was working 3 days. It was a great salary. And then I had 4 days off. And I was like, this is it. This is a godsend. I can guide now 4 days and then do this. And so I did. And I would work 3 days in corporate America, and I would guide. And I did that for as long as I could. And then, I started piecing together my business, piece by piece by piece by piece. And at one point, I completely left the Target job because I got offered a job in Maine, running a hunting lodge in Maine. Yep. So I left the Target job and went to Maine. And while I was in Maine, you'll see eventually this all ties together to what I'm doing now. I went to Maine and ran this hunting and fishing lodge, very historic, very nice lodge called Weatherby's up in Maine. And I ran that for a whole season. And I got to see a whole nother side of guiding that I didn't know existed. That's the hospitality side of it. like what it looks like to run and have a standardized business.
And even in like a different part of, not necessarily the world, but the continent.
Correct.
You know, a place that is totally different.
Correct. Totally different. And
so what were you? And what were you guiding up there? Was it fishing and hunting?
I wasn't
everything.
I wasn't really guiding up there at all. I was more about just running the lodge, managing day to day.
Just the business part of the lodge.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just the business side of it, and it was more on just the hospitality. Honestly, it was taking care of clients because the lodge owner was still there, and he was guiding a little bit, but he was running the business. He was running the finances, but he needed me there with the clients day in and day out, and interacting with them, getting them what they needed, and everything. And that was kind of what I saw, but then also take in mind too that I took a lot of things from the military. When you say take care of people, it is almost a overwhelming, almost experience when you talk about taking care of somebody. I mean, it's almost annoying when you say
it's. I mean, like essentially, it's a burden.
Yes. Well, not so much on me, but on the people. Like, dude, I'm telling you, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't ask me for anything else, please.
Right.
But my military standpoint for leadership is when you're taking care of your guys, like you're taking care of them. I mean, you'll change their socks if you have to, if they're that tired, because they're working their ass off for you, charging buildings and doing things, and you're doing everything you can to keep them motivated and up to speed with what I'm asking them to do.
They're keeping everyone alive.
Exactly. And I'm here keeping these people happy and taking care of everything they need. So I got to see that really in-depth, exaggerated hospitality side of things. And then I took that after that season and came back to Virginia and said, this is the business. Virginia needs a true hunting and fishing lodge in Virginia because there wasn't one at all. Outside of the super high-end Primland, that's a different experience.
Right.
But there's not like a true hunting and fishing lodge in Virginia at all. And I started it. Yep.
And it has grown into something very successful and very special, I would say.
It also has the potential to be something even more special just because of what you provide from your experience.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, it does.
And I will say, and like I say, we fish together a lot. And, what you're providing is a level above what is the normal, many levels above. Let me say that. And it takes so much hard work and forward thinking to do what you're doing. As I've came back to your lodge, for the past couple of years, I just came back a few weeks ago with a group of guys, and everybody was like, "Wow, this is such a great thing that you're doing here."
Yeah,
and I mean, you put 120% effort into it.
Yeah,
and I think that's what makes it, because you want it to be successful, and it is because that you have that drive for it.
Yeah, I do. I really enjoy it. I love the guiding side of it. I guide, still, I don't get to guide as much maybe as I like to anymore. I spend a lot of time with my little beautiful daughter, but, eventually, I hope to get to a point where, I'm taking out certain people that I want to take out.
Yes.
But now I'm kind of back to that main model where I'm there for the clients day in and day out. I got a really good guide team. They're basically extensions of my hand. I don't have to worry about them in anything they do.
How many guys do you have? How many guides do you have?
I technically have eight guides.
8 guides total?
Yep, 8 guides and 2 bird hunting guides.
Okay.
And they're extensions of my hand. Half of them were clients of mine at one point, so
they just grew to be a part of your team.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. And they know I'm serious about it. I can be very intense on certain things.
Never seen that part.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
kidding. I've seen it.
Yeah, I can be, I can be very intense about certain things, mainly because, it's a legitimate business. And
but you're also passionate.
oh yeah, absolutely. I'm very passionate about it. I'm very passionate about client, happiness, and client expectations. But I'm also passionate about my guides being the best guides in the industry. I really am passionate about that. And they love it too. They love the fact that I push them and challenge them and make them.
But the thing is, like you wouldn't push them to be the best guy they can be if you wasn't happy about what they were doing.
Right.
So, like them being happy as a guide, you're happy.
Correct.
And that shows a level of not just self-respect, but just the respect for your, like the business and the people that you supply your amenities to and what you can do for people in that aspect of like somebody wants to come and have, just a day fishing trip, like, your passion shows through the program that you offer.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's a very professional but at the same time, it is very, satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
personal.
It's calming and professional.
Yeah.
And
So your guides, and it's very unique because in the business, from what I've seen and experienced, and Garrett and I've we've fished with outfitters, but I think and then I'll let you speak to. My question is what separates you from the others, and I know what it does, but it's very unique is that your guides are pretty much full-time employed by you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's their job. That's their full-time job, which is kind of in the industry now. It's not heard of a lot.
Yeah, you're right. I have the vast majority of them are full-time guides. I got a couple that have other jobs, but they're looking to retire here soon, and then they'll come on full-time as well. It's added a little bit of stress to me, because I want to make sure that they're getting, I guess you say, I want to make sure that they continue getting the compensation they want to live a good, sustainable life, in a sense. And I'm also developing a couple of them so they can go off and do their own thing. There's nothing better than giving back to basically your employees so they can go off and mimic your business.
Sure.
And I think that's really neat to see that they've enjoyed working with you so much, and
to where you're their inspiration.
Yeah, almost mentor. Yeah, and it's good. And what happens then is that hopefully, that those individuals that do that, they did take what they've learned, in working for me, and for the business itself. And now they go out into a different area and they show that area, that level of professionalism. And then what you end up having is you have the whole entire game has to be stepped up to compete.
Yep.
Yeah.
And now you have nothing but happy clients who are getting the exact level of expectations that the industry standard needs to be at, so that all clients are happy. And then you get a standardized industry.
Do you ever like from like any of your clients, do you ever get any, not to call out any other, like businesses in your same field from Virginia, but do you ever get any clients that come to you and say like, I've been on a bunch of fishing trips and they don't do this, like I appreciate what you do, and like I've never gotten this before. Like, do you get that kind of feedback?
Sometimes, yeah, I do. And it feels good. And, I just tell them, hey, everything's different. You go to Chick-fil-A, you get a chicken sandwich. You go to McDonald's, you get a really shitty sandwich.
Yeah.
It's just the way that it works. And, not to be negative about anybody, but, if somebody wants to operate at a certain level that's where they want to stabilize themselves at. That's fine and dandy. That's what you want to do. That's fine. But, you know, I'm going to operate higher, and that's where we're going to stay, because we're going to continue pushing our standards higher and higher and higher.
Yourself being, you know, like say you have the A, B, C grade on the fly fishing, so you want to be like mediocre, B,
The best.
A, the best. Like you want to stay above that.
Yeah, I want to be the best, and I want my next year to be the best.
Yeah,
as well.
And you know, like through what I've known from you, like that's the only thing that you want to expect from yourself. Like you don't allow yourself to expect anything lower. So like you want to be nothing but the best, and it's not just for you, but because you want the best clients, and you want the best clients to know that they're happy and that they feel your joy for the love of what you do through their experience.
Yeah, and it may not be that I want the best clients. I don't know how you'd evaluate the best clients, but I just want all the clients to have the best time they possibly can. Yeah. And if that's with me, that's great. If it's with somebody else, that's fine too. I just want them to enjoy, you know, their day on the water or day afield, whatever that is. I want them to enjoy it. And if they're looking to, you know, relive, you know, some kind of experience that their grandfather taught them about,
Right.
I want them to look back and be like, yeah, this is the shit my granddad used to make me do. This is the best.
Yeah.
And it may not be with me. That's fine. But I just want them, whoever that is and wherever they're going, whom they're going with, I want them to have that. But sidebar, I want my guys to make that damn experience occur.
Yes.
On the water.
Right.
Whatever that looks like.
And you say this like something like, so those, I'll just say this whole time we've been talking about fishing, and you say from the field also. So, you know, like maybe let us know a little bit about your field experience with your bird hunting.
Yeah. So I fell in love with bird hunting. I did it as a kid down in Texas. I mean, my dad, I think he's going to be eternally upset with me because he thinks I shot the last quail on our ranch. Yeah.
And he probably did, folks.
I probably did. I remember shooting out of a tree with a chipmunk 22. Yeah, he was so mad at me. He made me eat that thing raw. He was so mad at me. Yeah. But that was probably the last quail I saw in Texas, and I never bird hunted again until probably 2012. A dear friend of mine who started Project Healing Waters Fly Fishing, the Disabled Veterans Program, took me on a bird hunting trip into West Virginia looking for woodcock. And I got to experience a really neat wild bird hunt up in the Canaan Valley, the Dolly Sods area, all that stuff. And doing that hunt, I remember I was just mesmerized by watching his dogs work and then point and these birds flush. And it was like, this is the coolest way to hunt a bird as I've ever seen in my life. And I was just, the fog, it was misty and snowy way up in the Dolly Sods area. And it was just so picturesque for photos I've seen in magazines. Yeah. It's like, this is what I've been missing out on. This is the coolest damn thing I've ever experienced.
This is my calling.
It is. It really was. And, you know, from that day forward, I began the pursuit of upland hunting in a hardcore way. And I bought, you know, Cooper. I started to train Cooper on ducks and woodcock, and we hunted. When I went to Ecuador, I left him with a girl I was seeing at the time. Yeah. And then I came back home, picked up Cooper, and we were right back at it again, bird hunting. Yeah. Cooper has retrieved more birds across this country than most citizens have visited states. Yep.
Yes, that's awesome.
He has retrieved birds in 36 states.
Wow.
For me.
Wow.
Yeah.
And Cooper's how old now?
He's 12 now. He's fully retired.
And he is, I mean, folks, he is a beautiful, beautiful chocolate lab.
Yeah.
And I mean, he is just he's so awesome. And I wish that everybody out there could see you with him.
Mm-hmm.
Like man, it's just awesome to see that relationship outside of hunting.
Yeah.
So
it's neat. He's the only dog that sleeps in my house. He's the only dog that's allowed to ride in my boats. Is Cooper. Yep. He's such a good dog. He is a profound hunting dog. Profound. Self-taught pointing dog. He taught himself how to point upland birds. I'd never asked him to that. It's incredible. But yeah, so that's kind of started the whole upland journey for me. And then I started buying pointing dogs and chasing woodcock around. And I started finding grouse in the mountains in Virginia, West Virginia. And I kind of really figured out the mountain hunting for the grouse, which has led me into being the only upland hunting guide that does wild bird hunts in Virginia.
Yeah. And folks, I want to clarify this too. And it's public land. A lot of it's public land hunts.
Yep.
And, I think that's something special.
Yep. Yeah.
Very,
they're all
very
public
special.
land. I do some preserve hunting with some local preserves that I help out, but probably 90% of my grouse hunts and woodcock hunts, they're all on public land through the national forest, through wildlife management areas, stuff like that. Yep.
So if you could give the bird hunters out there that are, would want to go experience a public land hunt like that, what advice do you have about public land hunting? Which public land hunting's hard, and I don't care if that's from a deer aspect, from a turkey aspect, from an upland aspect to a squirrel, small game aspect. What is your take on the hardest thing about public land hunting?
The hardest thing, number one, well, it's the hardest thing is always going to be mental. It's always mental. Mentally preparing yourself for potentially walking miles and miles and miles on end, and then finally finding a bird. So keeping your head in the game that it's going to happen,
right?
Because the very instant that you're lollygagging, or you're not focused on what you're doing, or you're feeling sorry for yourself that you haven't found a lot of birds, a grouse is going to flush right in front of you, and you're never going to get a shot at him. And that's how it always happens. So being mentally prepared for what you're doing, and you're hunting the king of the upland birds, and you're hunting them in physically demanding terrain, and you're doing it all day long. And that is the hardest part mentally to get over, is that you might go for 6 hours and have him walk 12 miles through the mountains, and then there's a bird there, and you miss your opportunity because your head's up your butt.
Yeah.
Because you're feeling sorry your legs hurt.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest part, is keeping clients focused on what's going on.
Right.
And that is like my job, is to keep them focused and push them. Push them up to the point that they're either successful or they become a safety violation, and I have to pull them out of the mountain because they're physically could potentially hurt themselves.
Right.
But sometimes we get out of the truck in the national forest and we find a bird within 3 feet, and they got to be prepared for that too. I mean, these are wild creatures.
Sure.
And the ones that are left have survived the avian flu. They have survived, horrible habitat.
Right.
They've survived everything, and they're still there. And we'll find, it's not uncommon to find 4 or 5 birds a day if you're up for the challenge.
Yeah.
I've had, really good clients that only thing they've wanted to do, again, going back to the old time, they've hunted grouse with their grandfather, and they find 30, 40 birds, but then their grandfather passed, they stopped hunting, and they want one more shot at a grouse before they pack up their gun and say, I'm done bird hunting.
Right.
And we take them out there, and they get them. And I've seen guys cry on mountaintops because they finally got another grouse that, the grandfather was just a devout bird hunter.
Yeah.
It's a really cool experience. It's really neat to get one. It's really cool to see one because, as most people think, the birds in Virginia are dead and gone. They don't exist anymore.
And they do. You hear the talk. I you're right. I 100%. And that's why I asked the question, and you're right. They do.
And that's a whole nother podcast, is going over the grouse in the mountains because there's so much detail that goes into it. But I will say, and leave it at this, is that 90% of the birds we find in grouse hunting, they're not where people think they're going to be at.
Yeah.
They're completely different habitat than what people ever think they're in.
Yeah.
And what books are written about it. You find grouse in this habitat. Well, the books are wrong.
Right.
In the Appalachian Mountains. They're not anywhere close to correct. I'm doing help with the biologists right now in the state, showing them where they're finding them at, and they can't believe it. But these birds that are still here, that are, having brood hatches, it's a whole different grouse than what used to be 30 years ago. So.
Wow. Well, in closing, I guess, I thank you for being with us.
Yep.
I really appreciate you making the drove 3.5 hours to be with us here at our property here at Little Sinking Creek.
Yeah, it's going to take me another 3.5 hours to cook dinner for everybody.
Yeah, Garrett's getting ready. He's in between podcasts today, so Garrett is preparing dinner for us, and we're grateful for that because he is a hell of a cook, I might add. So. But Wes, thank you again. And before we close, will you kind of tell everyone, how to get in touch with your company?
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, and if you guys are looking for a trip or any kind of information about where to go or what to do, for a trip or do it yourself kind of trip, you can contact us. Any of my guides as well. But yeah, you can get in touch with me at Wes at Wesley Hodges Fly Fishing. Or you can look at my website, wesleyhodgesflyfishing.com. All the information's on there. We'd love to get you guys out and show you guys a really good time, show you what we think guiding a client is all about, and offer you guys a whole different level of experience than is traditional. Mark and Garrett, best of luck with the podcast, guys. I know that you guys are two very respectable outdoorsmen. You appreciate the wild pursuits of authentic hunting, and you also respect nature, which really makes a great outdoorsman. So until next time, see you guys.
Well, thank you for being here once again. And folks, I'm Mark Bowman.
I'm Garrett Ball.
This is the Modern Pilgrim Podcast. We will talk to you soon.